on your smart TV. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome to Universal Pathways. I'm your host, Curtis Douglas-El, and you can basically watch us on all Android devices, on your iOS devices as well. You can also view us on all smart TVs, Sony TV, Samsung, LG, also on Amazon, Fire Stick, Roku, Apple TV, Horizon Satellite, and most social media such as Facebook and YouTube. Again, welcome to Universal Pathways, and I'm your host, Curtis Douglas-El, and today I'm in the studio with Mr. Kamal Seide-El. How are you doing, my brother?
Doing very well. Thank you for asking.
All right. Thank you for your patience. We had some technical difficulties getting started today. With that being said, we're going to go right into it. We have here today with us a young man who it is our hope today that he can speak to the youth and all those who are watching to give his perspective on his journey of life. The truth is we can all benefit from insight that we can now learn from others as well. So with that being said, my brother, can you introduce to our listening viewers yourself? Just kind of give us some perspective of your background.
Of course. Thank you again for having me. I am Kamal Seide-El. I am 29 years old now. I am my profession would be considered information technology. I've gone to university for IT, they call it, and it's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember, since I was, let's say, 3 years old, where my memory can go back that far. I grew up in a beautiful household with my mother and my brother, and honors to them both. And so, as well as I've recently gotten engaged to a beautiful young lady, in which I'm excited to share with you all.
Okay. All right. Engagement, that's a beautiful thing. I myself have been married now for, 2002? Subtract that from 2025, it gives what, 23 years, roughly. 23 years. And I say roughly because the date actually was in July. So it's not quite that 3-year aspect as far as making it a 23. So technically 22 plus. So engagement. Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. That's always a big leap. So you want to build a family.
Oh yeah, of course.
So family is important to you.
Very.
Beautiful. It's truly an honor when we have young men such as Brother Kamal Seide-El, who wants to have a family. So with that being said, what was it that stood out with your fiance that made you say she is the one? You know what I mean? Like you said, 29 years old, you're about to be 30. What was it at this point? Family is important. But let us know what stood out, because a lot of individuals do not want to really make that level of commitment. So it's truly an honor to see you willing to make that commitment. But what was it about her that stood out? And what advice would you even give to those now who might be on the fence? Should I get engaged? Should I not get engaged? How would you now advise them as well?
Well, yeah, that's a beautiful question. So first, what was it that allowed me to make that decision to get engaged with my fiance named Ariel? Now, when we first met, it felt like we've met before, and she would say, like, it feels like, this is a continuation, where she felt as if, we've definitely been together in, let's say, what they call past lives, right? And it was truly a spiritual understanding between us both, where the way that we saw the world was common for both of us. The way that we see it now, or we'll let's say our perspective of the world, how we saw it, most of the world living, was, lack of a better term, in a negative way. So we talk about the time now where there is young men and women that don't want to make that commitment, that don't want to be in what they call locked down, right? In a relationship, they want to kind of freely go through partners and just kind of just have fun, right? But for us, our commonality is we wanted to really find that one person that understood us. That understanding is really key to it all. The fact that we had that commonality made me see her in such a beautiful light, because there wasn't too many people that had that same thought process. So it was our understanding of wanting to be and find that one person that understood us and wants to spend, let's say, the rest of our lives together. And in a world where a lot of the advertisements and just the ways that we see examples of people living their lives are going against that, we were the ones that actually want to go with that portion where we live our lives together.
Okay.
And start the family.
All right. You seem to be saying all the right things. And that's great. But sometimes relationships can be kind of rough, rocky. You said communication, and that's a beautiful thing, understanding. And you mentioned, soulmate, as you find each other again, in different lives, these new bodies that you both now took. So did you have any challenges along the lines? Because I mean, like, for some, it might sound like a fairy tale, right? It just sounds so ideal in everything that you're saying.
Right.
But I know to really know if one have good communication, it's not when things are going great.
That's true.
When you're going to know if you have good communication. I've always embraced the fact that if you really want to know the test of anything that you have, it's not when things are going great. It's the difficulties.
That's right.
It's the stick-to-itiveness. Today we have some technical difficulties here in the studio, but the bottom line is it's us now moving through those challenges, because in every challenges you grow and you become a better human being. Universal pathway is just that. When you get lemons in life, what do you do with the lemons? You know what I mean? Yeah. So you said communication, it sounds great, but speak to us about some challenges that you might have faced, and how did you get around those challenges to now be engaged? Was it that smooth, like, boom, I saw her, it was love at first sight. She saw you, was like, oh, you know what I mean? That's the one for me. You know what I mean? Like, right. Was that it? Or was there some growing pains? I've heard about growing pains. I know with myself, 23 years, this coming July, but there were some growing pains. There were some challenges.
Right.
Even in the courtship phase. I remember it for like a year. I chased my current wife for a year, and she ignored the daylights out of me. Like, she was not trying to give me the time of day. So maybe you had a different experience, but I had to really change in my character, change in my approach, and I had to be consistent. Right. And I must say it paid off tremendously, because we have a better understanding, like you said, and we have a better communication. So just kind of speak to us and the listening audience about some of those challenges that you might have had, and how did you get around those challenges?
Yes, thank you. I will say, you mentioned consistency, being consistent. That was, I would say, one of the keys of having a fruitful relationship, because it was the consistency that allowed me and, us to really grow through those growing pains. For me, you couldn't really tell me that I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life with this woman. So I made that choice. And I also feel like that's one of the keys as well, the choice that we make. You have to make that decision. Okay, am I willing to spend the rest of my life with this person? Are we able to communicate and grow together? What does even the future look like? You envision everything, even in that moment. And through the growing pains, we had to communicate a lot. There was a lot of communication, because it was definitely rocky here and there. Right? We've been together about 5 years. And in those 5 years, we've even, say, separated, within those 5 years, and come back together. And that's really the coming back together is what shows you that, all right, this person, I can work with this person, right? We had to have differences, communicate through those differences, and then come out the other side with a solution. And that solution was the decision to stay together, right? And once you have that type of dialogue and you come to that conclusion, that's what allows us to then stick through it all.
I know for me, for instance, like you're saying, communication and the stick-to-itiveness and getting past the difficulties, but something that I saw even in myself was, as much as I was more talkative and my wife was more on the basis of she did not speak much.
Right.
So I then had to learn her love language.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How is it that she received information? So through my consistency, yes, in trying to communicate, I at times got frustrated, right? Because I couldn't really read. I wasn't able to read her feedback. But as I grow and then start to realize everyone does not process things the way I process things, you know, I had to start to learn to see things from her point of view.
Very true.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then, you know, when I said this, how did that make you feel? And then start to realize there were areas in which I was offending her, not realizing I was offending her. So then I had to now make a conscious choice to watch myself in my interaction with her.
Right.
Was there anything like that with you?
100%.
Okay.
For us, it was the opposite. So I don't speak that much.
I see what you're saying.
And she loves to talk.
Okay.
And yeah, we had to work through that, where, you know, she felt in the beginning that, oh, you know, if I didn't like to talk much, it was kind of boring. Right. But then in the times when we would have lots of good dialogue, let's say just on matters in the world, then, you know, it was the most fun experience.
Okay.
So then we both had to learn that there's times when, you know, we'll have a great time just talking, having that conversation, but each of us has this, well, let's say just talking for myself, I don't always want to speak that much. There's times where I'm a little introverted, go inside and just think. I'll just sit and think. And we had to learn each other's love languages, just like you said. We had to learn and understand how we operate, what we like and what we dislike. You know, it was a lot of that. And you know, there was some compromise, right?
Yes.
So I had to watch myself as well, where if I'm around her and I know I'm going around, hey, I need to just liven up, speak a little bit more, interact with whatever she's saying and not just listen and give like one word answers, right?
There you go.
So that was definitely a learning curve.
Beautiful, beautiful. And that's a very good point, because what you're saying is truly universal. You know, many times we see things from our point of view, but we not to put ourselves in the other person's shoe and kind of, you know, how do I make the adjustment to make this work? Like you said, you want to spend the rest of your life with this young lady. So now you've known your life, but now you have to adjust your life, and now two worlds are merging.
That's right.
So with this merging, you mentioned, you know, the give and take, the compromise. So we're going to take a little bit of this, we're going to take a little bit of that. And the goal is the best of both worlds.
There you go.
Right? The best of both worlds. So, and that's the beautiful thing about adjusting. And I truly am encouraged, again, to see young couples such as yourself. It reminds me of my very own years ago. I don't want to age myself, but years ago, when I was going through the similar aspect. I do wish you both the best, and truly do hope that you will have beautiful children, will make a beautiful impact upon this planet. So with that being said, both you and I are wearing the fezzes today, right? And for some of our listening audience who might not be familiar with what's on our head, the fez, we're going to speak to that a little bit when we come back from this commercial. Okay. Like we said, we're having some technical difficulties today, and it's quite possible that the cue was not received by those in the studio. With that being said, we're going to continue. We're going to try and go to a commercial at some point.
Hello viewers, you are watching Millennium News 24. America and global villages seen to America independence built by immigrants, manufacturers, roads, highways, educations, healthcare, IT, scientists, space, business development to all thousands of multimedia and all major social media platforms and news network in America. Millennium News 24, one of truthfully news networks in America and global news organizations. Please watch, follow and subscribe. We are in iOS and Android devices, Roku, Amazon, Apple devices, all smart TV, globally Horizon satellite, social media Millennium News 24, Millennium TV 24. Website www.millenniumnews24.com and www.millenniumtv24.com. Thank you.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Curtis Douglas-El, and this is Universal Pathways, a show that we speak to our listening audience where they speak about their journey in life. Today, I'm in the studio with Kamal Seide-El. He's actually the Chief Mufti, National Chief Mufti at the United Moorish Science Temple of America, and he's also the Chief Mufti for the Moorish Science Temple of America, New York. Again, welcome back, my good brother. And I say all that to say I introduce you to two organizations that he's actually the head of security local here in New York in the Queen's Temple #1, and he's also the assistant to the National Chief Mufti in the United Moorish Science Temple of America, and that has a lot to do with security. And I kind of spoke to the fez on our head prior to going to the commercial. With that being said, I just want to speak to you a little bit because it's a beautiful thing to see a young man such as yourself taking up the mantle of such a great movement as taught by Prophet Noble Drew Ali, Moorish Science Temple of America, and just all the teachings that he's now called us to as Moors. So with that being said, just speak us to a little bit as to your knowledge pertaining to the fez and just your role in the Moorish Science Temple of America.
All right.
I'll help you out with that as well. Okay. All right. Let me start first because I'm actually wearing the fez as well. The tassel itself is symbolic in many ways. The fez is said to be symbolic of the womb. The tassel itself, as you can see, it rotates 360 degrees. The connection to the womb go by with the umbilical cord, and also symbolically the rays of the sun. A lot of times we'll see more of a mortarboard on people's head when they graduate from the various different school of thoughts, universities, etc. That is flat. This is circular in nature, just symbolic of the circle of life as well. That's just a few aspects to it, but we don't really want to go too deep into that per se, but I really want to introduce the aspect of why the fez, because it's symbolic of us being conscious of the degrees that we are here to demonstrate as Muslim.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So with that being said, you're a Muslim and you're into the security aspect to the temple.
Yes.
What exactly do you do?
Yeah, so in a simple way, I protect the temple and the prophet, but in that it's symbolic of all Moorish Americans, all of my family as well. When we say the prophet, it's really the teachings, right? It's the acknowledgement, as well as we talk about the fez. In a simple manner, I would say it's my crown, right? You talk about the sun, the rays of the sun, it's enlightenment, and I am very grateful to have found Moorish science because in many ways it has created me to be a better human being. And we're about character building and nation building. And truthfully, it first starts with you, with your character and building that character and it to be the best way you can, right? Treating all how you would like to be treated.
Okay. I see why Arrow just said you kind of to the point. Your fiance named Ariel, right?
That's right.
As you can see, Mr. Kamal is a man of, not many words. He gets straight to the point. So I have to learn how to tailor my questions a little bit more to kind of get you to elaborate somewhat. But security is very important in life.
Yes.
And truth be told, if one is in security, the focus of the security is not as much talking is observing and truly being in tune with one's environment. So by no means am I expecting you to elaborate in a tremendous way, because I do see the focus of just the line of your work. You said you're also in IT, problem solving, solutions, etc., etc. Many times in life, we ourselves might not see the importance of security to protecting what it is that we do love. Sometimes we might not even see the necessity to be more technical in breaking down and knowing how things operate and function. But when we do have young individuals, such as the security to the temple, as you said, protect the temple and protect the prophet, and you said the prophet being the information. Information is knowledge, and knowledge is also can be seen in the form of what? Information.
That's right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So without getting too deep into it, what are some of those information that you've now come and become conscious of that you would think another 29-year-old should be equipped with to be a better human being?
Yes.
Through these teachings.
Through these teachings. All right. So we talked about the character building, right? And our prophet Noble Ali gave us divine instructions in the form of the Circle 7 Holy Quran, the Mormon Science Temple of America. And in those teachings, he outlines a lot of the ways to live your life, what to look out for and what to embody.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the 5 highest principles known to man: love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And in me, I like to keep things simple. So as long as I'm operating under those 5 principles, I feel like I'm doing the best I can, right? So first being love. And that truthfully is way more deep than I first understood it before more science. To operate in love, and when I talked about treat one as you would like to be treated, some people see that as the golden rule.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you love yourself, the more you will love others,
Mm-hmm. because
that's how you would treat them, how you would like to be treated.
Yes.
And be truthful with that, right? Honest with yourself. We even talked about the communication in the relationship, right? So we both have to be honest with ourselves. What do we like and dislike? What can we tolerate? What can't we tolerate? And truthfully navigating with that love,
Yes.
right? And in that sense, it's a lot of communication where, okay, you have to know yourself and then get to know the other person. But that's not going to happen without that love and then being truthful. And then that's what brings about the freedom to be yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's truthfully peace, because you feel peace when you can be yourself.
Indeed.
And justice being that principle that says you reap what you sow. So what some people may call it karma, right? If I do something harmful to one, it may come back and sow that seed for some harmful thing to happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And with that understanding, we truly, truly operate in a way that we will harm none, where we live in harmony with all things, with all life, and not disharmony or disorganization or causing any harm to others, whether it be thought, word, or deed, because it all truthfully starts in the thought. The more I learned more science, the more I understood that thoughts were things,
Mm-hmm.
where what I think is what I'm going to act on, is what I'm going to say.
Okay.
So before I even say and open my mouth to interact with another being, I must first think about, how am I going to do it? How will they receive it? What I'm going to say, would that offend me? And use, let's say, empathy,
Yeah.
kind of stepping in the other person's shoes to truly understand how they can receive things. And that helps a lot with the relationship.
Well said, my brother. Honest to your mother, your father, and those who raised you. You speak well on so many bases. It's truly an honor to see young men such as yourself growing and would want to embrace principles as such. You mentioned love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Justice is very profound in the sense that You know, like you said, you reap what you sow. It's the enforcement.
Right.
Without any type of enforcement, you know, the world would just be in disorder and just stay in chaos.
That's right.
But we know we need order. We need law and we need order. And that's always a good thing in a universal aspect, because people can now trust if they are wronged in any way, even in a relationship.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like you
Right.
said, we said the security, the need now to what people need to feel secure.
That's right.
So, you know, protect the prophet, protect the temple. You know, the word prophet now is also defined as what? A thought, right?
That's
A
right.
thought. So the thought now being the most ideal thought of the source, in this instance, being Muslim, we would say Allah manifests in the body. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was able to now bring just a whole aspect of order to Arabia. And that's a beautiful thing to see Muslims over, I mean, literally in the billions today
Mhm.
and growing. So the hope is for the world to become more peaceful, like you said, and the ability to be able to now express ourselves. You know, uniquely though, here in America, nationality becomes a part of the whole demonstration, right?
Yes.
From a more science perspective.
Right.
What's some of the differences that you've now realized in your life as a young man, proclaiming your nationality, not just in your society, but also in the government in which you live, and as you now continue to interact with other nations and the nation of the world? What's some of those differences that you've now been experiencing as to how you're viewed, as opposed to prior to not knowing about your nationality and the rich history that associated with those here in America?
Yes. Beautiful, beautiful question. Thank you. And being proclaimed Moorish American in front of my society and the nations of the world. Now being conscious of my religion and birthright. Well, so let's talk about prior. So prior coming to this knowledge, I considered myself Black, right? And then once I understood Black in political science means death. So that opened a lot of questions. What's political science? What does that mean per se? And even out in the street, once I have my fez on, I'm viewed differently. And now when I interact with my peers, you know, my brothers and sisters, I can truly talk to them about nationality and why it's important to know who we are, because in a political sense, without your religion and nationality, you're under, by default, Christianity, right? And now that I know, it gets a little deeper. I'm trying not to get too deep into it, but as it unfolds, now I'm viewed different in a way where I'll just keep it simple. We went to Hawaii,
Yes.
right? And this is the United Moorish Science Temple of America. Went to Hawaii, the Morabitin Conference. Now, there with a bunch of men and women in fezzes and turbans, we were greeted differently. We were treated different than when I didn't have my fez on. Without my fez on, the service, the feel is, I can just say, for lack of a better word, different. Because it does go very deep, but it's more of a feeling than something you can put in words. To where just the way people view you. So now I have my fez on, people come up and they ask me questions, you know, and I can share with them more science or just who I am and what the fez means. And that then allows others to just gain more perspective.
Mhm.
And that's what we're talking about. Universal Pathways, about perspective and growing in perspective. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing when I can just share, let's say, with my peers, you know, the importance of knowing your nationality and religion.
Okay, I just want to get a little bit deeper into that. But we're going to go to another commercial, and we're going to get a little bit more into, you know, Why is he viewed differently with the fez on as opposed to not wearing the fez? We'll be right back in 1 minute after this commercial.
Hello viewers, you are watching Millennium News 24. America and global villages seen to America independence built by immigrants, manufacturers, roads, highways, educations, healthcare, IT, scientists, space, business development to all thousands of multimedia and all major social media platforms and news network in America. Millennium News 24, one of truthfully news networks in America and global news organizations. Please watch, follow and subscribe. We are in iOS and Android devices, Roku, Amazon, Apple devices, all smart TV, globally Horizon satellite, social media Millennium News 24, Millennium TV 24. Website www.millenniumnews24.com and www.millenniumtv24.com. Thank you.
Welcome back to Universal Pathways. I'm your host, Curtis Douglas-El, and I'm in the studio today with Kamal Seide-El, 29-year-old young man who basically was speaking to the fact that as a Moorish American Muslim, having the fez, he's treated differently as opposed to his experience as a young man prior to not having a fez. He mentioned recently an experience he had in Hawaii, Morbidine Conference, that he was able to attend, a part of his society, and how he was treated as opposed to not having the fez and interacting. He mentioned the word black and that he thought he was black. Now he knows he's not black because the term black, politically speaking, is mean death. Death, according to science, political science, means death, civility mortuus. So let's kind of speak to that a little bit. And I just want to chime in saying this, because I too do know that there's a difference in how one is treated, and it has a lot to do with the history of the Moors. The Moors civilized Spain. They went to Spain 711, and the world owes a lot to the Mohammedans who went into Spain. Now, when we say Islamism, for instance, right? Is that an old, is that some, or is it a new, or is that an old time religion?
An old time religion.
It's an old time religion. So it's an old time religion because it speaks to what? The third word you said in love, truth, peace, right?
That's right.
So even Muslim, we say, Assalamu alaikum. The response is, wa alaikum salam. So we always greet in the interact in peace, and we always hope that that peace, even in the Christian religion, they said what? Rest in peace is now placed on these grave headstones. You also mentioned that by default, the black people here are treated as Christians. A lot of youths your age might not know that. It is said that you have a Christian surname for the most part, a Christian surname. So whether a person by choice decides to go to a church, they've already been categorized and placed by default in a church. A lot of people don't know that. And for us to be in a universal pathway, one truly needs to have choice.
Sorry.
You mentioned earlier communication, right?
Yes.
There's a give and a take. And it is always a beautiful thing to have ones who come and remind us of who we are as Muslims. You mentioned Prophet Noble Drew Ali being that to us here in the West, in the Americas, North America specifically. The youths need guidance.
That's right.
And that's why I said I'm really encouraged to see that you've been guided by your parents to now become a young man who's now getting engaged. And with that being said, is there a difference even in how you would do ceremonies? Because if you're not Christian, how exactly would you be doing your ceremony as it pertains to even your engagement? Think about that as you speak to this question, because it also speaks to the fact that how you're treated differently as it pertains to the fez. I know that marital vows, for instance, when I was in a Christian church, because at one point I too was in a Christian church, it is said at these marital vows in the state of New York, God and the state of New York. So most people do not know that the state becomes a part of the contract into the marriage, right?
Yes.
And as Muslim, it's really between you, the sister, and the obligations that you now choose to have together.
That's right.
Before the great God of Allah. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay. So you're not going to be buying your wife from the state?
Not at all.
Okay. Just check it. So again, the fez and its significance, being treated differently. People know the history of the fez.
That's right.
America knows the history of the fez. Why do we say that? Because when the history of America fell, 1492, the people here was influenced by those who wear the fez. And that's the truth. So honest to you speaking to the fez, honest to you sharing as opposed to your treatment as it pertains to wearing the fez, and honest to you as well for presenting yourself in a manner that is, you make the fez look good, my brother.
Thank you very much.
And we need models out there. We need examples of good Moorish Americans out there. And it's always a good thing to see these examples. So if you were to speak to a younger version of you who did not know about what Moorish science teach, what would you say? Would you get involved earlier or would you get involved later, and why?
That's a beautiful question. I definitely would get involved earlier. Truthfully, when I came to Moorish science, I felt like not everything, but a good portion of how I felt life should be lived was right in that pamphlet of 1927.
Okay.
Prophet Noble Ali, for me, would say hit the nail on the head, right? Where we talked about Islamism being peace with all life.
Pause on that thought. When you said that pamphlet of 1927, what are you talking about? For those who do not know what that is, what exactly? Because this is very important.
That's all.
Yeah.
That pamphlet of 1927 is the Circle 7, Holy Quran, Circle 7 of the Moorish Science Temple of America, where I spoke about a little bit earlier, where the Prophet Noble Drew Ali has laid down divine instructions for Moorish Americans to live their life. And even speaking a little bit to my past self, right? I remember I have this memory pretty vivid because I go back to it here and there when even I would take the bus to school. So I had to take about a bus and a train to high school. And I remember seeing my peers and how they were viewed, but because of how they acted, who peers were other fellow brothers and sisters who would consider themselves Black, right? Usually they sat in the back of the bus and they were rowdy, making lots of noise. And I remember me being different or wanting to separate myself from that thought process, from that example of being, by sitting in the front of the bus, all the way in the front, first seat, if I could, and just being to myself and just thinking like, why are they acting that way? Why is it that we're not respecting even the other people on the bus that may not want to hear all the noise or the music or whatever the case may be? Yes. So it's the way that we're viewed that I really realized I wanted to get away from. So these are different examples we might see, in pop culture, where it seems like they, and by they, let's say television, entertainment space, want us viewed as, we don't really care what people say, what they think about us. We're just going to do whatever we want. But that's, in my thought and my understanding, that wasn't the right way to live life. It's about caring for others. It's about, I talked about empathy, putting yourself in those shoes, just to even have the consideration to think that, oh, maybe these people don't want to hear loud music, or maybe I'm speaking too loud. Maybe somebody's on a call and I'm interrupting them. All these thoughts that go through my head is just considering others. And I feel like in consideration, that's truly how we harmonize life.
Indeed. Indeed. As you were speaking, I'm reminded of the thought that comes from the same literature that you mentioned, divinely prepared by the noble prophet Drew Ali, the Holy Chronicle of More Science Temple of America. He said that reflection is the business of man. Reflection. And as we reflect, if I were to do something I just did all over again, how would I do it different? Would I do it different? And if so, how would I improve upon it?
Right.
A lot of the audience listen in, and I would hope they could get this thinking that information is just that, information. But once we receive information, what we do with it, it either can make us better or can actually make us worse.
Right.
Because not all information is good information.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen that, being in the IT field.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to troubleshoot,
Yeah.
problem solve. And it's the same thing too, even doing security. But as a human being in general, we have filters, and we utilize these filters to pretty much now discern what is what. So in that aspect of reflection, and like you said, the thinking, utilizing that brain, what the fairs even really mean, what it really means to be that model of a good Moorish American Muslim.
That's right.
For the youth watching us to gain some perspective, you said start earlier. The outcome of the life, the trajectory of the life can only become better.
Oh, yeah.
Because one is now matching themselves with the ideal.
Exactly.
There must have been a blueprint as to why we took these bites, right?
Yes.
You said you met you with your fiancés as if y'all know each other before.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like people have these moments, they call it deja vu. So in saying universal pathways, the truth be told, we can learn from everyone. And for the youth, I'll definitely say, yes, I agree. Get your fez early. To the sisters, get your turban early. And I'm just going to segue in just saying this real quick. There's a feedback I got from someone recently where it's a sister. She shaved her entire scalp. And the word she used was alopecia.
Okay.
Right? Basically hair loss.
Yeah.
So our people in general are receiving loss. They're taking L's because they're categorized incorrectly as Black, Negro, colored. They're being given products that are not necessarily beneficial for them. And so much shifts when you present yourself as somebody who's a part of a nation, who's a part of society, whether it be the fez or the turban from the perspective of our sisters, right?
Right.
And coming together now where we're actually seeing this earlier with the youth, the trajectory for us as a nation, as a community, it shifts.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
So what that being said, the universal perspective, if there's one universal, you mentioned love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. If there's one thing from all those principles, from a universal perspective, that you would say is that demarcation line, meaning is that one thing that always bring you back. What would you say that is?
See, that one's, thank you for the beautiful question, because that one, I will say, it's a little difficult, but because I really have the two, which would be love and truth, but I'll stick with love. I feel like that's they're both universal, but for me, I feel I can better speak to the love aspect, because truthfully, we have to love the truth before we even get to the truth. I talked about being honest with self, seeing where you're really at, how you think, just assessing. And said reflection is the business of man. So reflecting on yourself, how do I want to be in it as an example? How do I want people to view me? But it's not really just about people. It's just how do I want to be like to myself? Because I'm really viewing myself.
Correct.
Right. And all are connected through that universal love. you know, and we all have a heart, right? We have a heartbeat. So sometimes we talk about, let's have a heart to heart,
Yes,
you know. That to me is love,
indeed.
you know, sharing that, the perspective where nobody in that heart to heart wants to harm the other person, knowing that, right? Because everybody, I feel like, wants to protect themselves. And so it's harder for people to open up.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you actually meet somebody like my fiance, Ariel,
Yes,
who allows you to open up, who wants to know who you truly are, that is only love that would do that. You know, to understand one another is through love. To have the decision to want to do that, right? And I feel like it comes back to choice as well. You know, do I want to act loving? And to do that is not something, a one-time thing, this one situation, it's all the time.
indeed.
And whether it's, let's say, even a flower, you know, that's on the ground. Some people pick flowers, they love the smell. And that's beautiful. Like, we should love all living things because, like I said before, it's all connected. Without trees, we wouldn't have the oxygen that we breathe.
Indeed.
You know, so even loving our environment, right? Treating the earth better. But the earth can also be considered our bodies. So what health is to the physical body, even that is honesty to the soul. And so love is that universal perspective that I think, and pathway that connects all.
Indeed. And not to, again, like I said, I went to kind of bring it in saying the crown is very important. So I mentioned a young lady who lost her crown because she did not see the significance of not utilizing certain chemicals
Right.
on her hair. By no means am I bashing anyone, but I put the name out there. Madam C.J. Walker introduced the iron comb to the so-called Black community. And the whole perspective was, if we don't love ourselves, like you said, pivot love, then we can fall for information that's not beneficial to us as a community. And one now look at models and attempt to imitate those models, not knowing that they were the original models, or it's okay for them to be themselves. But I need not walk around trying to be somebody else.
Right.
You know, it is said in More Science, how did the Prophet Noble Drew Ali begin to uplift the Moorish American by teaching them to be themselves? So it's very rare when you have a nation of people who have to be taught to be themselves. And here in North America, in the Americas, we have those people who are classified as Black, Negro, and colored. So it's always a beautiful thing when we have young men such as our good brother Kamal Seide-El, who actually wants to be himself and know the difference, and also have now moved into that aspect where he wants to now be able to be with a partner and create children's and be a parent to those children. So honest to you again, my good brother,
Thank you.
in being an example. And we ourselves, both male and female, need to make decisions where whatever we allow to be in our consciousness or even on our crown, it makes a difference how the world view us, because the world view us universally. And like you said, we're all connected. So that connection is so profound that wearing a suit, having the fez plays a huge part. But I want to kind of own it. You're wearing a bow tie today. I'm wearing a tie, right? But some can say, is he a part of the Nation of Islam? Were you ever a part of the Nation of Islam?
I was not, no.
Okay. So the bow tie is just a part of your style.
Oh, yeah. You know, I just figured put the bow tie on today. I like the African print on it.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Some of our viewers might see the bow tie because, again, signs and symbols for the conscious mind. And sometimes people see something, it revert them back to something else. References, right?
Yes.
But honest to our brothers in the Nation of Islam as well, it is said that Elijah Muhammad, peace be upon him, one of the leaders of the Nation of Islam, was a part of the Moorish Science Temple of America during the time of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So the teaching of Prophet Noble Drew Ali is very profound. It has now impacted the globe. but most people are not aware of it because they can't connect the dot. It is our hope when one do sit here on Universal Pathways that we can now help others to connect the dot.
That's right.
Right?
Yes.
Whether it be the sister now who said, hey, you don't need the hot iron for your hair. You're beautiful. You don't need to perm your hair. You're beautiful. We don't need to bleach our skin. We're beautiful. We need to really start to speak that beauty into each other. And it's a beautiful thing to see the youth starting to do that and being better communicator. Honest to that. So with that being said, today's show, we did start a little bit late. So again, I take full responsibility for some of the technical difficulties that we did receive and have earlier today. But it is our hope to continue to improve here at Universal Pathways. Again, we get information, we make the necessary adjustment. But in closing, my good brother, if you were to speak to, and I might have said the question a certain way, but I want to still say this question.
Yes.
If you were to speak to a younger version of yourself and an older version of yourself, what would you say to both?
Yeah.
So in other words, I'm asking you to time travel. You realize that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's
No, they can do that through thought. So that's a beautiful question.
Yes.
And truthfully, not even just to myself, because like I said, we're all connected, right? To even, let's say, the youth out there, my brothers and sisters, peers, as well as people, the ones that's a little bit older around my age, whatever the case may be. Ask questions and do research. When I was younger, I would always ask a lot of questions because I wanted to know why. Why does this person do that? Why should I do, your parents tell you, go, let's say, take a shower, right? Why, right? To get the body clean. So that's how we gain that understanding. We ask questions and then you go do it for yourself. That application is how we gain that wisdom. So ask questions frequently, then go fact check, do your research. Even the way that I formulate my thought process, sometimes I say it's like a scientific method where you have a hypothesis and then we have to go through a testing phase to then get to a conclusion to see if it confirms or denies that hypothesis. And to me, that's helped a lot with figuring out how to live life, whether it be interactions with peers, brothers and sisters, or on the job. We say troubleshooting, IT, all the technical work in that, and how to go about even finding information, because a lot of the times you may not have the exact information in front of you. You have to go look for it. And there's an art in how to gain information. And I would say never stop looking, never stop searching for information. That pertains to what you want to know, whether that be life or IT, right?
Indeed.
So.
Well, I like the way he answered the question in actually speaking to the younger version of himself and the older version of himself. He connected to the fact that we're all connected. So it doesn't matter if it's the past or it's the future. We're all connected in the ever-present now. And by making that connection in the ever-present now, I truly want to say honest to everyone who allowed this production today to happen, because we did have some technical difficulties. And we always want to thank the people in the background. Honest to the CEO of Millennium News 24, Mr. Noor Tafador, all the great work that he's been doing in assisting in just bringing humanity and the world at large connected in having news and information that helps to make the planet better. For all our listeners viewing us at the various different aspects and networks, do support this network of information coming to you by way of Millennium News 24. It is very important that we support media that is unadulterated, that brings you pure information to make the planet itself better. So again, honest to him and his work, honest to his staff and his work. And I truly want to, again, remind everyone that we're here normally from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock every Saturday. This is Universal Pathway, available on Millennium TV 24 network. We hope our listeners and audience has been edified today and are encouraged to live their best life despite the conditions they might be facing. Know that We are a global family and need to be better neighbors in our current and future interaction. It is our hope to bring guests who could speak to that in some aspect. It is our hope that you benefited from today's conversation. Thanks again and gratitude to you, our viewing audience. Remember to share this interview with others who you think might benefit from the information we shared. Again, thank you, Mr. Kamal Seide-El, for being here today. I truly am honored to see young men such as yourself being on the path, continuing the path, and I look forward to see what you and others will unfold. So again,
thank you.
We'll see you next Saturday, hopefully 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. This is your host, Curtis Douglas-El, and this is Universal Pathway. Peace and love.